It had been very windy in the night, so that when Great Uncle Bulgaria, Bungo, and Wellington Womble came out of their burrow, they saw that there was rubbish everywhere. The wind had blown newspapers and bags and packets and bits of this and pieces of that everywhere. What a mess the common was in.
"Off you go, young Wombles,"
said Great Uncle Bulgaria,
"and tidy up all this rubbish as fast as you can."
Bungo and Wellington each had their tidy bags firmly in their paws. Just at that moment, an extra large gust of wind blew all the leaves and bits and pieces into the air.
"Dear me," said Great Uncle Bulgaria, "what a lot of work there is, to be sure. The first Womble to fill a tidy bag and bring it back to the burrow shall have 2 helpings of dinner."
"Well, I'm sure I shall get back to the burrow first, because I work faster than you do," said Bungo to Wellington. Bungo's a very bossy Womble. He always thinks he knows best about everything. "Yes, I expect you will," said Wellington. Wellington's the smallest and shyest of the Wombles. Bungo tidied up all kinds of things, bags and newspapers and packets and pieces of this and that, and he put them all into his tidy bag. Wellington was working hard too, but he wasn't as quick as Bungo. It took him more time to put the rubbish into his tidy bag. He couldn't quite work out why he was finding it so difficult. "Oh dear," said Wellington. The wind was still blowing, and the rubbish kept blowing about too. It seemed to have a mind of its own. It wasn't easy to pick up, or even to get hold of it, except when the wind changed. It was all very awkward. Bungo's tidy bag was nearly full, and he was sure that he would be the Womble who would have 2 helpings of dinner. "I'm sure I've got a lot more than Wellington already," he said to himself. He looked round to see what Wellington had done. Wellington was in trouble. He'd got his scarf caught in a bush. While he was trying to get free, he noticed a small bit of blue rubbish. Bungo saw it too. "You can take that if you like," he said. "It's not very big." Wellington picked it up and looked at it. It was a balloon. "It's a blue balloon," said Wellington. "I wonder if I can blow it up." He took a deep breath and began to blow. The more Wellington blew, the bigger the balloon became. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. It grew even bigger than Wellington himself. "What a jolly fine balloon," said Wellington admiringly. "It's whoops!" And just then there was a very strong gust of wind, and before Wellington knew what was happening, he was being blown along. Harder and harder blew the wind, and faster and faster and faster went Wellington. He ran across the grass, and down a slope, and up a small hill. He had no breath left, and just as he got to the top of the small hill, there was a very strong gust of wind. The next thing Wellington knew was that his feet weren't on the ground any more. He looked down, and the ground had vanished. "Help!" shouted Wellington, clinging onto the blue balloon for all he was worth. "Put me down! Stop it! I'm flying!" But there was no one to help him. Bungo heard a shout, but he couldn't understand where it was coming from. There was no Womble to the left of him or to the right of him. "Must have imagined it," he said, and he went on tidying up. "Help!" shouted Wellington again as he was blown higher and higher and higher. He hung on to the blue balloon and shut his eyes tightly. It was a very strange feeling being blown up into the sky. It was a bit like going up in a fast lift, except that it didn't feel very safe. Up and up and up went Wellington and the blue balloon. He was so high up now that he could see all over the common. He could see Bungo, with his tidy bag almost overflowing, standing by the windmill, looking very busy and important. And Wellington could see Tomsk swimming in the lake. He was looking for water rubbish because he could swim best of all the Wombles. And Wellington could see Orinoco, fast asleep beside a bramble bush. Orinoco should have been tidying up rubbish like all the other Wombles, but instead he was having a nice 40 winks and dreaming about dinner time. Lazy Orinoco. And last of all, Wellington could see Great Uncle Bulgaria standing in front of the burrow. He was looking out across the common and trying to see which of the young Wombles had tidied up the most rubbish. All that Great Uncle Bulgaria, Bungo and Tomsk could hear was the noise of the wind. None of them had noticed that up in the sky was a big blue balloon. and a very small Womble. Then all of a sudden, something even more frightening happened to Wellington. There was a small plop, plop, plop sound, and suddenly, with a nasty hissing noise, the big blue balloon began to get smaller and smaller and smaller. The big blue balloon had a hole in it. Down, down, down fell Wellington. The common got closer and closer. "Help!" he shouted once more, and then he shut his eyes. And down came Wellington, as light as a leaf, and right in front of the burrow. He didn't hurt himself at all, because the big plastic bag he'd tied it up had made a parachute for him. So when he opened his eyes, he was safe and sound, and very close to home. And he still had his tidy bag, full of rubbish, held firmly in one paw. Great Uncle Bulgaria was surprised.
"Well done, young Wellington,"
said Great Uncle Bulgaria.
"You're the first Womble to get back home, and what a lot of rubbish you've tidied up, to be sure. Yes, you shall have 2 helpings of dinner, all right. How did you manage to get back to the burrows so quickly?"
"I'm not sure about that," said Wellington, shyly. "But I am sure that I'm very, very hungry. What's for dinner?"